In the deepest hour of night, when the world has exhaled its last breath of daylight and settled into the embrace of darkness, there comes a whisper soft as silk, gentle as moonbeams, filtering through ancient temple windows. Tonight, we journey together into the sacred art of letting go, where cherry blossoms teach us about impermanence, and the mountain shows us the beauty of stillness. Before we begin this gentle voyage into wisdom, if you find peace in these calming stories, feel free to subscribe, give this video a like, and gently share in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. Your presence here, wherever you are, adds to the quiet sangha we create together in these moments of reflection. Picture, if you will, a single cherry blossom petal, pink as dawn's first blush, releasing its hold on the branch. It does not cling, does not resist the wind's invitation to dance. It simply lets go. And in that letting go, it finds a different kind of beauty, a different kind of purpose, spiraling gracefully toward the earth, like a prayer made visible. Tonight, we too shall practice this art of release. We shall walk the moonlit path where an ancient monk once trod, his footsteps so light they barely disturbed the morning dew. We shall breathe with the rhythm of centuries-old wisdom and discover what remains when we cease our endless grasping at the wind the night air carries, the scent of jasmine and the faint sound of temple bells in the distance. A stick of sandalwood. Incense burns slowly on a wooden altar, its smoke curling upward like thoughts dissolving into the vast sky of consciousness. Here, in this sacred space between sleeping and waking, between holding on and letting go, we begin our gentle exploration of what it truly means to surrender control. Asterisk, asterisk, what is the sound of peace before thought arrives to name it? This question floats through the evening air like the call of a distant temple bell, neither demanding an answer nor fearing silence. It simply exists, patient as the moon, waiting for us to discover its meaning in the spaces between our heartbeats. In a monastery garden, where time moves like honey and wisdom grows as naturally as bamboo reaching toward the sky. An old master once asked his student, "If you let go of everything, every worry, every plan, every fear, every hope, what remains?" The student, eager and quick, began to list all the things that surely must remain: the body, the mind, the memories, the self. But the master simply smiled and pointed to the morning mist dissolving in the first rays of sunlight. "Look," he whispered, "how effortlessly the mist releases itself to become one with the air. Does it mourn its form? Does it cling to being mist? Or does it simply transform, moment by moment, into something new and no less beautiful?" Tonight, as we rest here together in this cocoon of quietude, we might ask ourselves this same gentle question: what would remain if we loosened our grip on the steering wheel of life? What would remain if we stopped trying to control the river's flow and instead learned to float with its current? The answer, like morning dew, cannot be grasped with the mind alone. It must be felt, breathed, experienced in the soft animal body that carries us through this world. It lives in the pause between inhale and exhale, in the moment when the worried thoughts finally grow tired and settle into silence like birds returning to their nests at twilight. In ancient China, there was a Taoist sage who spent his days sitting by a river, watching the water flow around the rocks. When people asked him what he was doing, he would say, "I am learning from my teacher." When they asked who his teacher was, he would point to the water. "See how it never fights the stone," he would say softly. "See how it finds its way around every obstacle without anger, without force. It simply flows, and in flowing, it carves the grandest canyons and nourishes the highest mountains." This is the first whisper of letting go, not the harsh release of things torn from our grasp, but the gentle opening of hands that have learned the difference between holding and strangling, between loving and possessing, between guiding and controlling dot as the night deepens around us, and the stars begin their ancient dance across the velvet sky. We rest in this question, letting it settle into our bones like warmth from a hearth fire. What remains when we let go? What remains when we stop trying to sculpt the wind? Asterisk, asterisk. In the soft candlelight of understanding, the Buddha's first noble truth whispers to us across 25 centuries. Life contains suffering. But oh, how gently this truth arrives when we receive it not as judgment, but as recognition. Like a friend who finally names what we have always felt, but could never express. This ancient wisdom offers not burden, but relief. The word in Sanskrit is dukkha, a wheel slightly off its axis, causing the cart to bump and jolt as it travels down the road. We have all felt this jolt, this subtle wrongness that comes when we try to make permanent what is inherently impermanent, when we try to control what is inherently flowing, when we demand that life conform to our small and frightened dreams, instead of trusting its vast and loving intelligence. But here, nestled in the second noble truth, like a pearl within an oyster, comes understanding. This suffering arises from our attachment, our clinging, our desperate attempt to hold the river in our cupped hands. We suffer not because life is difficult, though it sometimes is, but because we fight the difficulty. We suffer not because things change, though they always do, but because we resist the changing. Picture an ancient monastery at dawn, where monks move like whispers through corridors worn smooth by countless bare feet. In the meditation hall, a single candle flame dances, never fighting the air currents, never resisting when they make it flicker. It simply burns, moment by moment, neither grasping for tomorrow's wax, nor mourning yesterday's melted pool. This is the flame of non-attachment, not cold or uncaring, but vibrantly present, completely alive to this moment alone. The third noble truth arrives like sunrise after a long night. There is a way out of this suffering, not through accomplishing more, not through controlling better, not through finally getting life to obey our commands. The way out is through. The door to freedom swings open, not when we learn to grasp more skillfully, but when we learn to release our grasp altogether. In the gentle teachings of mindfulness, we discover that thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of consciousness. We need not push them away. This too is a form of control. We need not follow them wherever they lead. This too is a form of attachment. We simply watch them arise, exist for their moment, and dissolve back into the spaciousness from which they came. The sky remains vast and clear, unmarked by any cloud that has passed through it. The Zen master Hong Po taught, "The foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think, not what they see." In the soft twilight of understanding, this means we learn to trust the direct experience of this moment, the breath entering and leaving, the heart beating its ancient rhythm, the profound aliveness that needs no thinking to know itself, rather than the endless commentary of the mind, always comparing, always judging, always trying to improve upon what is. Here in this teaching, gentle as moonlight on water, we find the invitation to a different way of being, not the way of the clenched fist, but the way of the open palm, not the way of the dam, trying to stop the river, but the way of the riverbank, supporting the flow while remaining stable and strong. Asterisk, asterisk, in a temple nestled high in the mountains of old Tibet, where the air was thin and clear as crystal, lived a monk named Tenzin, whose joy was legendary throughout the valley. Pilgrims would climb for days just to sit in his presence, not because he spoke great teachings, though his words were always kind, but because he carried peace, the way flowers carry fragrance, naturally and without effort. One autumn morning, a wealthy merchant arrived at the temple, his robes fine silk, his manner urgent. He carried with him a burden heavier than any of the treasures in his caravan, the desperate need to control his fortune, his family, his future. He had heard of Tenzin's wisdom and came seeking techniques, methods, spiritual practices that would help him maintain better control over his vast and complicated life. "Master," he said, bowing low but with eyes that darted constantly to the windows, calculating the time, the weather, the 100 details that demanded his attention. "Teach me the secret of peace. I have gold. I can pay whatever price you ask. But I must have peace, and I must have it quickly. My business cannot wait. My family depends on me. My responsibilities are crushing me under their weight." Tenzin smiled, a smile like sunlight on fresh snow, and invited the merchant to join him in the temple garden. There, an ancient cherry tree grew beside a small stream, its branches heavy with fruit that had been ripening in the mountain sun. As they approached, a gust of wind shook the tree, and several ripe cherries fell to the ground with soft thuds. The merchant's eyes widened in distress. "Master, your fruit is falling. Should we not gather it quickly? Should we not build a wall to stop the wind? This is waste. This is loss. Surely we must do something." But Tenzin simply picked up one of the fallen cherries, bit into its sweet flesh, and offered half to his guest. "Tell me, friend," he said gently, "has this cherry lost its purpose by falling? Has the tree failed in its duty by letting go?" The merchant, tasting the perfect sweetness, fell silent. "For 30 years, Tenzin continued, settling cross-legged beneath the tree with the unhurried grace of one who has nowhere else to be, "I have watched this tree. In spring, it releases its blossoms without sadness. In autumn, it releases its fruit without fear. In winter, it releases its leaves without regret. And every season, in this letting go, it discovers anew what it means to be alive." They sat together in the dappled shade, and gradually the merchant felt his shoulders begin to soften, his breathing begin to slow. Around them, the garden carried on its ancient business, bees moving from flower to flower, leaves rustling in the breeze, water flowing over smooth stones with a sound like whispered prayers. "But master," the merchant finally asked, his voice now softer, more curious than demanding, "if I let go of controlling my business, won't it fail? If I stop worrying about my children, won't harm come to them? If I release my grip on my plans, won't chaos follow?" Tenzin pointed to the stream. "Does the water worry about reaching the sea? Does it hold meetings with the rocks, negotiating which way to flow? Yet it always finds its way, nourishes everything it touches, and arrives exactly where it needs to be." The merchant spent 3 days in the garden, and when he finally descended the mountain path, his caravan barely recognized him. He moved with a different rhythm now, responsive rather than reactive, flowing around obstacles rather than battling them. His business flourished as never before, not because he controlled it more tightly, but because he learned to dance with its natural rhythms. Years later, when people asked him about the secret he had learned, he would simply smile and say, "The cherry tree taught me that letting go is not giving up, it is trusting the deepest wisdom of life itself." And in the mountain temple, Tenzin continued to sit beneath the ancient tree, watching the seasons turn, teaching by example the beautiful art of holding life lightly, with open palms and a grateful heart. Asterisk, asterisk, in the deepest chamber of the heart, where silence dwells like a pearl at the bottom of the ocean, we begin our gentle descent into the self. Not the self that wears masks and plays roles, not the self that hurries and worries and plans tomorrow while missing today, but the self that exists in the space between breaths, in the awareness that watches thoughts arise and pass away, clouds across an endless sky. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already, and feel yourself settling into this moment, like a stone finding its resting place at the bottom of a still pond. Each breath becomes an invitation to go deeper, not deeper into thinking, but deeper into being. With each exhale, you release a little more of the day's accumulated tensions. With each inhale, you draw in the peace that was always here, waiting. Patiently beneath the surface noise of living dot in the meditation halls of ancient monasteries, monks would sit for hours in this same descent, not seeking anything, not trying to achieve any particular state, simply allowing awareness to settle into its own natural depth. They understood something we are only beginning to remember, that beneath all the turbulence of thoughts and emotions lies an ocean of profound stillness. And this stillness is not empty. It is full of the most essential ALIVENESS. Imagine now that you are that awareness itself, vast and spacious as the sky. Thoughts drift through like wisps of cloud, some dark with worry, some bright with hope, some heavy with memory, some light with dreams. But you are not the clouds. You are the sky itself, unmarked by whatever weather passes through. The clouds of anger come and go, and the sky remains. The storms of fear blow through, and the sky is unchanged. The gentle rain of joy falls, and the sky holds it all without effort, without strain. This is the first great discovery of the inner journey, that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who witnesses thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which emotions arise and subside. You are not your worries about the future or your regrets about the past. You are the eternal present moment, the now that never comes and never goes, because it simply is. With each breath, you sink a little deeper into this recognition, like a bird finally remembering how to rest its wings and trust the air to hold it. The need to control, to fix, to manage every detail of existence begins to feel as unnecessary as trying to rearrange the stars. You begin to sense the profound intelligence that beats your heart without your conscious effort, that grows your hair and heals your cuts and dreams your dreams while your thinking mind sleeps. In the Zen tradition, they speak of just sitting, shikantaza. In Japanese, not sitting to achieve anything, not sitting to become more peaceful or enlightened or wise, but sitting as an expression of the enlightenment that is already here, already complete. Like the moon reflecting perfectly in still water, consciousness reflects itself in the mirror of awareness, and in that reflection, there is nothing to seek, nothing to grasp, nothing to become. Feel yourself now as that still water, reflecting. The moon of presence with perfect clarity. The moon does not struggle to be reflected, and the water does not strain to do the reflecting. It happens naturally, effortlessly, as the deepest things always do. Your breath breathes itself. Your heart knows its rhythm. Your awareness is aware, without trying to be aware. This is the secret the mystics discovered in their deepest contemplations. That the seeker and the sought are one, that the wave and the ocean are one, that the drop of individual consciousness and the vast sea of universal awareness are one and have always been one. The apparent separation is like the space between mirrors, an optical illusion that dissolves the moment you look deeply enough. As you rest here in this recognition, feel how all the day's struggles to control life begin to seem like a dream you once had about being someone else. The real you, the essential you, the you that exists before thought and beyond form, needs nothing, lacks nothing, fears nothing, because it is everything. It is the source from which all experiences arise and to which they all return, like waves playing on the surface of an infinite ocean. Asterisk, asterisk, in the treasuries of ancient wisdom, there lie hidden gems that sparkle with unexpected light, cones and dawns. Paradoxes that slip past the mind's defenses like moonbeams through bamboo leaves. Tonight, we discover some of these gentle surprises, teachings that arrive not through the front door of logic, but through the open windows of wonder. There once lived a Zen master named Joshu, famous throughout old China, not for his sternness, but for his playful wisdom. A monk approached him one day, carrying the weight of spiritual seeking like a heavy pack on his shoulders. "Master," the monk asked earnestly, "does a dog have Buddha nature?" This was a profound question in those days, touching the very heart of what it means to be awakened, what it means to be divine, what it means to be worthy of liberation. Joshu's answer came swift as lightning, surprising as thunder from a clear sky. Moo, he barked, meaning no or nothing. But in that single syllable lay such depths that monks would contemplate it for decades, like divers exploring an underwater cavern that seems to have no bottom. What did he mean? Was he saying the dog lacks Buddha nature? Was he denying the fundamental teaching that all beings possess the seed of awakening? Or was he pointing to something even more radical, that the very question reveals our misunderstanding? For if Buddha nature is our true self, then who is there to possess it? If we are already what we seek, then what is there to attain? The hidden truth in Joshu's bark is this: the moment we make Buddha nature into something we can have or not have, we have missed it entirely. It is not a possession but our very being, not an achievement but our original face, not something to gain, but something to stop obscuring with our endless seeking. Asterisk, asterisk, in another temple, in another century, a student asked his master, "What is the Buddha?" Expecting perhaps some sublime discourse on enlightenment, compassion, the nature of ultimate reality. Instead, the master replied, 3 pounds of flax. 3 pounds of flax, nothing more magical than the rough fiber used to make rope and cloth. The student was bewildered, perhaps even insulted by such a mundane answer to such a profound question. But here lies another gentle surprise. The sacred is not separate from the ordinary. The Buddha nature that we seek in meditation halls and mountain retreats is the same Buddha nature that folds laundry and washes dishes and feels the rain on its face. The absolute and the relative, the divine and the human. Nirvana and samsara are not two different places, but two ways of seeing the same seamless reality. The Sufi poet Rumi understood this when he wrote of the guest house of the heart, where every emotion, joy and sorrow, anger and love arrives as a teacher in disguise. We spend so much energy trying to control which guests we welcome, demanding that only pleasant visitors knock on our door. But the hidden wisdom teaches us that every experience, every feeling, every moment of life contains the seed of awakening if we receive it with an open heart. There's an old Taoist story about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "Such bad luck," they said, but the farmer only replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors celebrated. "Such good luck." Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." When his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg, the neighbors lamented, "Such misfortune." "Maybe," said the farmer. When war broke out and all the young men were drafted except his son with the broken leg, the neighbors marveled, "Such fortune." And still the farmer replied, "Maybe." This maybe is the wisdom of not knowing, the humility that admits we cannot see the whole tapestry from our small vantage point. We try so hard to control life because we think we know what outcomes will make us happy. But the farmer's maybe suggests a different possibility. That happiness comes not from controlling outcomes, but from releasing our attachment to having things be different than they are. The deepest surprise of all might be this: that letting go is not about becoming passive or indifferent, but about discovering the kind of action that flows from inner stillness rather than inner turbulence. The kind of love that gives without grasping, the kind of strength that yields without breaking. Like water, which seems soft and weak, yet carves through the hardest stone, this way of being appears to surrender everything, yet loses nothing that was ever real. Asterisk in the quiet temple of the heart, where candles flicker without wind and incense, carries prayers to realms beyond naming. We come to understand that suffering and peace are not enemies locked in eternal combat, but dance partners in the grand choreography of existence. Like shadow and light, they define each other, teach each other, and ultimately reveal themselves as two faces of the same profound mystery. The Buddha, sitting beneath the Bodhi tree on that night when the morning star announced his awakening, saw into the very heart of human suffering with the clarity of still water reflecting the moon. He saw that we suffer not because life is inherently painful, though pain certainly visits every human heart, but because we resist the natural flow of experience, trying to hold on to pleasure and push away pain, attempting to freeze the river of existence into the particular shapes that please us. Imagine a magnificent river flowing through a mountain valley, clear and strong and purposeful. This river represents the natural flow of life, sometimes gentle, sometimes turbulent, sometimes deep and slow, sometimes shallow and quick. Now imagine someone standing on the bank of this river, trying to control its current with their bare hands, becoming frustrated and exhausted as the water simply flows around their efforts. This is the image of human suffering, not the river itself, but our futile attempt to make the river conform to our will. But what would happen if this person, tired from their struggle, simply sat down on the riverbank and watched? What if they learned to appreciate the river's power without needing to direct it, its beauty without needing to possess it, its music without needing to change its song? In this shift from resistance to acceptance, from control to trust, suffering transforms into something altogether different. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of peace. Peace, in the deepest sense, is not the opposite of chaos, but the stillness that remains unshaken by any chaos. It is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence that can hold difficulty without being overwhelmed by it. Like the eye of a hurricane, which remains perfectly calm while surrounded by tremendous motion, peace is the still center within us that no external storm can touch. In the meditation traditions of Tibet, practitioners speak of shamatha, calm, abiding a state where the mind becomes like a clear mountain lake, reflecting whatever appears on its surface without disturbance. Clouds may pass overhead, birds may skim the water, storms may rage, but the lake's essential clarity remains unchanged. This is the peace that passes understanding, not because it is mysterious or otherworldly, but because it is so natural, so fundamental to our being, that we overlook it in our search for something more dramatic. The Zen master Dogen taught that enlightenment is not something we achieve through struggle, but something we express through letting go of the struggle. To study the Buddha way, he wrote, is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. In this forgetting, not a loss of memory, but a releasing of the small, separate self, we discover our true nature, which is as vast and unchanging as space itself. Consider the ocean, how it contains all weather without being disturbed by any weather. Storms rage on its surface, while its depths remain in perfect stillness. Waves crash and foam and dissolve back into the sea, and the ocean is neither increased by their presence nor diminished by their passing. This is the nature of our deepest. Being spacious enough to contain all experiences, peaceful enough to remain undisturbed by any experience. When we truly understand this, suffering begins to reveal its hidden gift. Each moment of pain, each experience of loss, each encounter with the inevitable disappointments of human life becomes a teacher, pointing us back to the peace that was never actually threatened. The heart that breaks open in grief discovers it has room for infinite compassion. The mind that releases its cherished plans discovers the freedom to respond spontaneously to what life actually offers. This doesn't mean we become indifferent to suffering, our own or others. Rather, we learn to meet suffering the way the earth meets rain, openly, completely, transforming it into nourishment for new growth. We discover that the very experiences we once fought against can become gateways to a deeper understanding, a wider love, a more authentic peace. In this recognition, the ancient teaching, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, reveals its profound wisdom. Pain, the pain of loss, of change, of the gap between expectation and reality, is woven into the fabric of existence. But suffering, the story we tell ourselves about the pain, the resistance we mount against it, the demands we make that it be otherwise, this is a choice, though often an unconscious one. The path to peace is not the elimination of all difficulty, but the cultivation of a heart spacious enough to hold difficulty with grace, a mind clear enough to see through the stories that transform pain into suffering, a being so deeply rooted in its own essential nature that no storm can uproot it from the ground of its own infinite peace. Asterisk, asterisk, in the gentle hours before dawn, when the world exists in that liminal space between sleeping and waking, we discover that freedom is not what we thought it was. For so long, we have imagined freedom as the ability to control our circumstances, to arrange life according to our preferences, to build walls high enough to keep out what we don't want, and doors wide enough to welcome what we do. But in the soft light of wisdom, we begin to see that this is not freedom at all. It is a beautiful prison we have decorated with our dreams. True freedom, the sages whisper across centuries, is found not in getting what we want, but in wanting what we get. Not in controlling life, but in dancing with it so skillfully that there is no difference between the dancer and the dance. This freedom is not won through struggle, but discovered through surrender, not achieved through grasping, but revealed through letting go. In ancient India, there lived a king who possessed everything a person could desire: vast wealth, devoted subjects, a beautiful family, palaces that stretched beyond the horizon. Yet he was profoundly unhappy, tormented by the constant effort required to maintain and protect his possessions. He spent his days in worry and his nights in restless planning, a prisoner in his own paradise. One day, a wandering sage arrived at the palace gates, carrying nothing but a simple bowl and wearing robes that had been mended so many times they were more patch than original cloth. The king, struck by the profound peace radiating from this humble figure, invited him to stay and teach. "You have nothing," the king observed, "yet you seem to possess everything." "I have everything, yet I feel I possess nothing." "What is the secret of your happiness?" The sage smiled with the gentle warmth of sunlight on water. "Your Majesty, you believe you own your possessions, but look more carefully. Do they not own you? You think you control your kingdom, but does it not control you? The freedom you seek lies not in having more or having less, but in understanding the difference between enjoying and grasping, between loving and possessing." That evening, as they walked together through the palace gardens where flowers bloomed, without concern for ownership, and stars shone without need of permission, the sage continued his teaching. "Watch the wind," he said softly. "Does it cling to the leaves it moves? Does it try to possess the flowers it carries? Yet it touches everything, brings life to everything, and remains perfectly free because it holds nothing." This is the paradox that mystics have celebrated throughout the ages. The more tightly we grasp life, the more it slips through our fingers like water. The more we try to control our experience, the more controlled we become by our need to control. True freedom emerges not from dominating life, but from learning to live in harmony with its deeper rhythms, not from imposing our will upon reality, but from aligning our will with the vast intelligence that moves through all things. Asterisk. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu points to this freedom when he writes of the sage who acts without acting, who accomplishes great things by not forcing, who leads by example rather than coercion, who influences the world by being so deeply centered in their own nature that others naturally want to find their center too. This is Wu-Wei effortless action, the freedom that comes from moving in harmony with the Tao rather than against it. Consider a master calligrapher creating a work of art. Their hand moves across the paper with such fluid grace that the brush seems to dance by itself, the ink flowing like water, finding its natural course. This is not the result of controlling the brush, but of becoming so skilled, so present, so aligned with the intention of beauty that brush, ink, paper, and artist become one seamless expression. The calligrapher is completely free because they have completely surrendered to the moment of creation. That this same freedom is available to us in every moment of our lives. When we wash dishes, we can either fight against the task, resenting the time it takes, the repetitive nature of the work, or we can surrender to it, finding in the warm water and simple motions a form of moving meditation. When we face a difficult conversation, we can either struggle to control its outcome, scripting our words and manipulating the other person's responses, or we can show up authentically, speaking our truth and trusting the intelligence of genuine communication. The Zen archer achieves perfect accuracy, not by gripping the bow more tightly or thinking more intensely about the target, but by becoming so present, so centered, so aligned with the natural movement of the arrow that there is. No archer, no bow, no target only, the perfect completion of a single unified action. In that moment of release, when the arrow flies true, the archer experiences the deepest freedom, the freedom that comes from perfect harmony between intention and action, between self and circumstance, between the individual will and the universal. Flow. This is the freedom that cannot be taken away by any external circumstance, because it depends on nothing external. It is the freedom of the mountain, which remains stable whether the weather is calm or stormy. It is the freedom of the ocean, which contains all rivers without being changed by any river. It is the freedom of space, which holds all things without being limited by anything it holds. Asterisk, asterisk, beside a temple in the mountains of ancient Japan, where cherry blossoms fall like snow in springtime, and autumn leaves blaze with colors that have no names, flows a river that has become the teacher of countless seekers. This river, neither hurrying nor delaying, carries within its flowing the deepest teaching about the nature of existence, that everything changes, everything passes, everything flows, and in this very flowing lies both the source of our suffering and the secret of our liberation. Sit for a moment beside this imaginary river, feel its presence, hear its constant song. Notice how the water is never the same. Each drop that passes before your eyes is unique, unrepeatable, here for an instant, and then gone forever downstream. The river appears to be one thing, but it is actually an infinite succession of individual moments, each arising fresh and dissolving into the next, like thoughts in the mind, like breaths in the body, like days in a human life. The Buddha called this fundamental characteristic of existence anicca, impermanence, and he taught that truly understanding this single truth could liberate us from the suffering that comes from trying to make permanent what is inherently transient. We suffer when we cling to youth while the body ages, when we demand that joy last forever while emotions naturally ebb and flow, when we insist that our loved ones never change while everything in existence is in constant transformation. But, oh, how difficult it is to truly accept this teaching. The mind rebels against impermanence, like a child refusing to believe that summer vacation must end. We know intellectually that everything changes, yet we live as if we expect our current circumstances, our present relationships, our existing plans to somehow exempt themselves from this universal law. We photograph the sunset as if we could capture its beauty permanently, forgetting that its beauty lies precisely in its transience. In the temple beside the river. An old monk once shared this story. A man fell deeply in love with a butterfly, so enchanted by its graceful flight and delicate beauty that he decided to catch it and keep it forever. He spent hours chasing it through the garden with a net, becoming increasingly frustrated as it danced away from his grasp. Finally, exhausted and defeated, he sat down heavily on a bench and began to weep. To his amazement, The butterfly, no longer pursued, came and landed gently on his shoulder. In that moment of stillness, of not trying to possess its beauty, he experienced a deeper intimacy with the creature than any capture could have provided. This is the paradox of impermanence. When we chase after experiences, trying to make them permanent, we miss the very beauty we're trying to preserve. But when we learn to appreciate the present moment for exactly what it is, temporary, unrepeatable, precious because it is passing, we discover a kind of intimacy with life that no amount of grasping can achieve. The river teaches us that impermanence is not a flaw in the design of existence, but its very essence, its gift, its saving grace. Because things change, winter eventually becomes spring. Because things pass, intense pain does not last forever. Because nothing is permanent, we are constantly being offered new possibilities, fresh starts, unexpected openings where we thought there were only walls. Think of how the river shapes the landscape through which it flows. It does not accomplish this through force or haste, but through the gentle persistence of always moving, always changing, never the same from one moment to the next. Drop by drop, season by season, the river carves canyons, nourishes forests, creates deltas where new life can flourish. This is the power of impermanence, not destructive but creative, not taking things away, but constantly offering new forms, new possibilities, new ways of being taught in the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism. Practitioners meditate on the inevitability of death, not to become morbid or fearful, but to cultivate what they call the precious human birth, an appreciation so deep for the temporary gift of being alive that every moment becomes sacred, every breath becomes a blessing, every encounter becomes an opportunity to love and be loved fully. When we truly understand impermanence, we begin to hold our lives more gently, like holding a bird firmly enough that it feels safe, lightly enough that it remains free to fly. We love our friends and family more deeply because we know our time together is limited. We appreciate our health more fully because we understand it is not guaranteed. We find meaning in our work, not because it will last forever, but because it allows us to contribute something beautiful to the flowing stream of existence. The river beside the temple continues its ancient teaching, never preaching, simply flowing. In its constancy of change, in its reliability of impermanence, it demonstrates the profound truth that the only thing we can count on is that everything changes. And paradoxically, in accepting this truth, we find the peace that passes understanding, not because our circumstances become permanent, but because we learn to find our stability in the flow itself, our security in insecurity, our home in homelessness. This is the wisdom of water, to be completely fluid, yet never lose its essential nature, to take any shape, yet never be defined by any shape, to flow around every obstacle without being defeated by any obstacle, to give way constantly without ever giving up, to change every moment while remaining always itself. Asterisk, 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 high in the Himalayas, where the air is so thin it seems to whisper secrets directly to the soul, ancient mountains stand in meditation, their peaks piercing clouds that have been forming and dissolving for millennia. These mountains teach us something profound about the nature of stillness, not the stillness of stone or statue, but the dynamic stillness that exists at the center of all movement, the eye of every storm, the unchanging awareness within which all change occurs. From the valley below, the mountains appear utterly motionless, permanent, carved from eternity itself. Yet science tells us they are in constant motion, rising grain by grain, worn away particle by particle, dancing slowly with the rhythm of geological time. Glaciers flow like frozen rivers down their faces. Rocks tumble in avalanches, seasons paint them white and green and gold in endless cycles. The mountains that seem most solid are actually fluid, responding to pressures we cannot see, shaped by forces we can barely comprehend. This is the paradox that mystics have pointed to throughout the ages. True stillness is not the absence of movement, but the presence that remains unchanged by any movement. Like the mountains that dance with time while appearing eternally stable, we too can learn to embody this dynamic stillness, moving through the activities of our lives while remaining rooted in something deeper than circumstance, something more fundamental than the ever-changing weather of thoughts and emotions. In the Zen tradition, they speak of sitting like a mountain, not rigid or inflexible, but profoundly stable, rooted in the earth yet reaching toward heaven, present to all weather without being disturbed by any weather. The mountain does not resist the storm or chase away the clouds. It simply remains itself while allowing all conditions to pass through its vast space. Snow may cover its peaks, rain may wash its slopes, wind may howl through its valleys, but the mountain's essential being remains untouched, unmoved, complete, unto itself. Imagine yourself as such a mountain now, feeling your base rooted deep in the earth of being, your peak reaching into the infinite sky of consciousness. Around you, the weather of daily life continues. Thoughts rise like morning mists. Emotions flow like mountain streams. Sensations come and go like changing seasons, but you remain centered in the vast stillness that is your true nature. Moon, too, teaches us about this dynamic stillness. Night after night, it appears in the sky, sometimes full and radiant, sometimes a sliver of silver, sometimes hidden entirely behind clouds. Yet we know that the moon itself never changes. Only our perspective shifts, only the conditions of viewing alter. The moon remains complete, whether we can see all of it or none of it, whether it's waxing or waning, whether it's shining brightly or obscured by weather dot. In the same way, our essential being, the awareness that observes thoughts, the presence that witnesses emotions, the consciousness that experiences but is not defined by any experience, remains complete and unchanging regardless of the conditions of our lives. When we're happy, this awareness is present. When we're sad, this same awareness is present. When we're confused, excited, bored, or inspired, the awareness that knows these states remains as clear and spacious as ever. This is why the ancient texts speak of the witness consciousness, not as something separate from our experience, but as the very space in which experience unfolds. Like the sky that contains all weather, but is never stained by any weather, this awareness holds all of our human experiences without being defined by any of them. Clouds may gather and storms may rage, but the sky remains eternally clear, eternally open, eternally free. A Taoist master once said to his student, "Look at the pine tree on the mountainside. In summer, it is green. In winter, it may be covered with snow. In autumn, the wind bends its branches. In spring, new growth appears. Yet through all seasons, through all weather, it remains a pine tree. It does not become confused about its identity because of changing conditions." This is the wisdom you must learn to remain yourself regardless of what weather passes through your life. The moonlight on the mountain creates shadows that shift throughout the night as the moon travels its arc across the star-filled sky. These shadows are not separate from the light, but are light's way of revealing the mountain's contours, its valleys and ridges, its unique topography. In the same way, the changing conditions of our lives are not obstacles to peace, but pieces, way of revealing our inner landscape, showing us where we are still clinging, where we are still resisting, where we still believe our happiness depends on external circumstances. When we learn to sit like mountains and shine like moons, stable yet responsive, unchanged yet ever-changing, silent yet eternally expressing our deepest nature, we discover that letting go is not about becoming passive, but about finding the perfect balance between being and becoming, between stillness and movement, between accepting what is and participating fully in what is unfolding. This is the profound teaching of the mountain and the moon. that we can be completely present to life's movement while remaining anchored in life's stillness, completely engaged with time while dwelling in the timeless, fully human, while never forgetting our boundless, eternal nature. Asterisk, asterisk, in the sacred geometry of a single moment, where eternity intersects with time and the infinite expresses itself through the particular, we discover the most radical teaching of all, that presence is not a state we achieve, but our natural condition, not a place we arrive at, but where we already are. Not something we must cultivate, but something we must stop obscuring with our endless journey toward. Somewhere else. Imagine a master tea ceremony, where every gesture has been refined through centuries of practice into pure expression. The tea. Master kneels in quiet reverence, each movement deliberate yet effortless, completely absorbed in the simple act of preparing tea. There is no hurry to reach the drinking, no impatience with the careful steps of preparation. Each moment of the ceremony, the warming of the pot, the measuring of the leaves, the pouring of water, is complete unto itself, lacking nothing, needing nothing beyond what it already is. This is the art of true presence, to be so completely here, so fully engaged with this moment, that time stops its restless rushing and reveals its deeper nature as an eternal now. In presence, washing dishes becomes as sacred as prayer, walking becomes a form of meditation, breathing becomes a celebration of the miracle that we are alive at all. But oh, how the mind resists this simplicity. It has been trained for so long to be somewhere else, planning the future, analyzing the past, comparing this moment to other moments, evaluating whether what is happening now is sufficient for our happiness. The mind is like a restless traveler who spends so much time reading maps and planning routes that they miss the landscape through which they are actually traveling. In the Buddhist monastery, where mindfulness was first systematically explored, monks would practice satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness, learning to be present to the body, to feelings, to the mind, and to the objects of the mind. Not analyzing or judging these experiences, but simply being aware of them with the kind of gentle, spacious attention that a loving parent gives to a child at play, completely present, utterly accepting, naturally protective without being controlling. When we are truly present to the body, we discover that it is not the solid, separate thing we imagined, but a constantly changing flow of sensations, energies, aliveness. The breath is not something we do, but something that is doing itself through us, connecting us moment by moment to the larger breathing of the world. The heartbeat is not ours alone, but part of a vast rhythm that includes the tides, the seasons, the orbiting of planets around stars. When we are present to feelings, we discover that emotions are like weather patterns in the sky of consciousness, powerful, beautiful, temporary, and completely natural. We no longer take them so personally or fight against them so desperately. Joy arises and we enjoy it without clinging. Sadness appears and we allow it without resistance. Fear comes and we meet it with compassion rather than fear of the fear. We are present to the mind itself. We see that thoughts are not commands that must be obeyed, but simply phenomena arising in awareness, no more substantial than clouds in the sky. We begin to recognize the difference between thinking and being lost in thought, between having emotions and being controlled by emotions, between experiencing sensations and being defined by sensations. A Zen story tells of a student who complained to his master, "Every time I sit in meditation, my mind is filled with thoughts. I cannot find peace." The master smiled and pointed to a nearby stream. "Look at the water," he said. "Do you see how clear it is? Yet it is constantly in motion, constantly flowing. The clarity is not disturbed by the movement. The movement is an expression of the clarity." This is the deepest secret of presence. We don't have to stop the natural movement of life in order to be peaceful. We don't have to silence all thoughts, eliminate all emotions, or create perfect conditions, and then order to be awake. We simply have to recognize the awareness that is already here, already clear, already complete. The awareness in which thoughts arise and pass away like birds flying through an infinite sky. True presence has a quality of easeful alertness, like a cat resting in the sun, yet instantly responsive to any movement in its environment. It is simultaneously relaxed and aware, soft and sharp, receptive and responsive. In this state, we are not trying to be present. We are simply not being absent. We are not working to pay attention. We are simply not being distracted by the stories we tell ourselves about what our attention should be focused on. In the garden of presence, every sensation becomes a teacher. Every sound becomes a bell of awakening. Every moment becomes a doorway into the sacred. The feeling of feet touching the ground becomes a reminder of our connection to the earth. The sound of rain on the roof becomes a lullaby sung by the sky. The taste of water becomes communion with the essential element of life itself. This is why all the great spiritual traditions, despite their different languages and cultural expressions, ultimately point to the same simple teaching. Be here now. Not as a commandment that creates more effort and strain, but as an invitation to stop the exhausting journey toward somewhere else and recognize the wholeness, the completeness, the profound okayness of where we already are. In presence, we discover that we are not separate from life, but expressions of it, not observers of existence, but existence knowing itself through our particular form of awareness. The wave discovers it has always been the ocean. The ray of sunlight realizes it has never been separate from the sun. The individual consciousness awakens to its true nature as universal consciousness, playing for a while in the beautiful game of form and time. Asterisk, asterisk. In the innermost sanctuary of the heart, where silence speaks louder than words and emptiness reveals itself as fullness beyond all imagination, we come at last to the teaching that underlies all other teachings, the truth that supports every practice, the recognition that dissolves all seeking, that what we have been looking for throughout our entire lives is what we have always already been. This is not a philosophical concept to be understood by the mind, but a living reality to be recognized by the being. Like a fish swimming in the ocean, suddenly realizing it has never been separate from water, or like space recognizing that it has never been confined by the objects it contains. This awakening is not the acquisition of something new, but the remembering of something so fundamental, so obvious, that we overlook it in our search for the extraordinary in the deepest teachings of Advaita Vedanta. The ancient sages proclaimed, Tat Pham Ase, thou art that, pointing directly to the truth that the seeker and the sought, the drop and the ocean, the wave and the sea have never been two. What you are looking for, you are. What you long to become, you already are. What you hope to find through spiritual practice is the very awareness that is even now aware of your searching. Consider the metaphor of a dreamer searching within their dream for the way to wake up. No matter where they look in the dream, under dream rocks, in dream temples, through dream books, they will not find awakeness, because awakeness is not located within the dream, but is the consciousness that is dreaming. The moment they recognize themselves as the dreamer, the search ends not in finding something new, but in recognizing what was always already present. This is why the Zen masters could be so paradoxical, so playful, sometimes even seeming to discourage their students' spiritual efforts. They were not being cruel or dismissive, but were pointing to the futility of searching for what you already are. It is like looking for your glasses while wearing them, or searching for your car keys while holding them in your hand. The very capacity to search is itself what you are searching for. In the mystical traditions of Sufism, they speak of the polished mirror of the heart that reflects the divine light purely when it is cleansed of the dust of ego and desire. But the deepest teaching reveals that you are not the mirror, you are the light itself, temporarily imagining itself to be confined by reflective surfaces, temporarily believing it needs mirrors in order to shine. A master of the Kashmir Shaivism. Tradition once taught, you are not a body having spiritual experiences. You are not even a soul having human experiences. You are consciousness itself, playing in the fields of space and time, pretending for a while to be limited, pretending for a while to be separate, so that you can have the exquisite joy of remembering your true nature. This recognition does not diminish the human experience, but transfigures it. When we know ourselves as consciousness, the ordinary world becomes sacred not because it is separate from the divine, but because it is the divine expressing itself in countless forms. Every face becomes the face of the beloved. Every moment becomes a celebration of being. Every breath becomes an expression of the infinite breathing itself into form. Yet this truth is so simple, so immediate, so present, that the seeking mind often rushes past it looking for something more complicated, more dramatic, more worthy of all the effort it has invested in the spiritual search. It is like someone who has traveled around the world looking for their home, only to discover they never left their doorstep. The journey was beautiful, the adventures were meaningful, but what they sought was always right where they started. This is not a teaching that eliminates the relative world of form and experience, but one that recognizes form as the play of the formless, experience as the dance of pure awareness. We can fully engage with our human lives, loving, working, creating, serving while knowing that none of it threatens or diminishes what we essentially are. We can feel emotions fully while knowing we are the space in which emotions arise. We can engage with thoughts completely while knowing we are the awareness that knows all thoughts. The pathless path that leads from seeking to finding, from becoming to being, from separation to unity, is not a journey through space and time, but a recognition that happens now, in this very moment, in the very awareness that is reading these words. You are not practicing to become enlightened someday in the future. Enlightenment is the natural state of the consciousness that is even now aware of these thoughts, aware of the awareness of these thoughts, aware of being aware. This is the final letting go, releasing even the identity of being a seeker, surrendering even the project of awakening, allowing even spiritual practice to dissolve into the naturalness of being what you have always been. Not the dramatic enlightenment of movies and books, but the quiet recognition that you have been looking through the very eyes you were seeking, breathing with the very breath you are trying to find, living as the very life you are hoping to. Discover in this recognition. All questions dissolve, not because they have been answered, but because the questioner recognizes their true identity. All seeking ends not because the goal has been achieved, but because the seeker awakens from the dream of being separate from what they sought. All suffering ceases not because circumstances become perfect, but because the one who suffered is recognized as a temporary costume worn by the one who is eternally free. This is the deepest truth, the final teaching, the end of the pathless path. You are that which you seek, and you always have been ... as our gentle journey through the landscape of letting go draws to its natural close, like a river finally reaching the ocean it has always been flowing toward. We rest here together in the profound silence that underlies all words, the peace that supports all seeking, the love that embraces all forms of learning and forgetting. Tonight, we have walked moonlit paths through ancient wisdom, sat with teachers, both human and more than human, listened to stories that whisper rather than shout their truths. We have learned from cherry blossoms about the beauty of release, from mountains about the stillness within movement, from rivers about the grace of flowing with rather than against the current of existence. We have discovered that letting go is not about becoming empty, but about recognizing the fullness that was always here. We have seen that surrendering control is not about becoming powerless, but about aligning with a power far greater and more intelligent than our small, worried minds could ever orchestrate. We have touched the truth that what we seek in our deepest longing is not separate from us, but is the very seeking itself, the very awareness that is even now aware of this recognition. In the gentle teachings we have shared, may you find not new burdens to carry, but invitations to travel lighter through this beautiful, difficult, temporary, eternal human life. May the wisdom of the Buddhist letting go support you when the grip of attachment causes suffering. May the playfulness of the Zen masters remind you not to take the spiritual path so seriously that you miss the joy of simply being alive. May the flowing of rivers and the stability of mountains teach you how to be both responsive and rooted, both engaged and unattached. As you prepare now for sleep, or perhaps as you simply rest in this moment of quiet listening, allow yourself to feel held by the vast intelligence that beats your heart, breathes your breath, grows your hair, and dreams your dreams without any effort from your conscious mind. This same intelligence that guides the migration of birds and the blooming of flowers is the intelligence that has brought you through every challenge you have ever faced, and it will continue to guide you with a wisdom far beyond what worry could ever provide. Let yourself sink now into the profound trust that underlies all spiritual practice, the trust that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, not a test to be passed, but a gift to be received, not a chaos to be controlled, but a dance to be joined. Rest in the knowing that you are exactly where you need to be, exactly as you are, learning exactly what you need to learn at exactly the right pace for your unique unfolding. If you find your mind reaching forward into tomorrow's concerns or backward into yesterday's regrets, simply return to the breath, return to the body, return to this moment where life actually lives. Let each exhale be a small practice of letting go, each inhale a gentle welcoming of what is here now. In this simple rhythm of receiving and releasing, you touch the very heart of spiritual practice, the very essence of wise living. Thank you, dear friend, for sharing this quiet path with me tonight. Thank you for your willingness to listen deeply, to question gently, to remain open to the mystery of your own being. In a world that often feels divided and hurried, you have chosen to pause, to reflect, to remember what matters most. This choice itself is a gift to the world, a small but profound act of rebellion against the forces that would keep us distracted from our own deepest wisdom. Wherever you rest your head tonight, whether on familiar pillows or in strange places, may peace find you there. May your dreams be gentle teachers, your sleep be deep restoration, your awakening be soft and grateful. May the Dharma light your path, not as a blazing torch that blinds, but as a gentle lamp that illuminates just the next step, just what you need to see to walk with confidence and grace. And may you remember, in the morning and in all the mornings to come, that letting go is not losing but finding, not emptying but filling, not dying but being reborn moment by moment into the vast, loving, intelligent mystery that you have always been and will always be. Good night, dear friend. Sleep well and be at peace.